dear viewers, welcome back to Serah's computer session. In this session, I will be dealing with generations of programming language, classification of programming languages, and where does the programming language C stands. Let's move on to the video. Okay, first generations of programming languages. See, as we have studied generations of computers, okay, programming languages can also be classified into different generations. First we'll see what is a first generation language. See, the first generation language can be called as a primitive programming language because it might have been developed when programming languages started started developing. So first generation languages are nothing but machine language. It comprises of only zeros and ones, and they are binary codes. Now see, when just imagine a program that includes only zeros and ones. It will be really difficult to understand for what the program is being written until and unless we are very good at machine language programming. Okay, but this language can be directly understood by the computer because computers understand only machine language. So there is no use of any kind of conversion for the processor to execute this machine language. The processor can directly run the machine language. Okay. Now the limitations of this first generation programming language is that it is difficult to use. See, how can we use this programming language in our daily programming routines, like writing zeros and ones only? It's really very difficult, and to understand what you write, to understand a program written by a programmer, it's really difficult. And if errors happen, how can we detect the errors in a program with only ones and zeros? It is really difficult to if errors happen, to detect the errors. It's really difficult, as well as to correct the errors also. It's really difficult. The next limitation is that it is machine dependent. A program written for one machine will not work on another machine. It depends on the architecture of the machine. Every machine language depends on the architecture of the machine in which it runs. So you will have to write different programs for different machines, and it is really difficult. It's a limitation. And next we'll move on to second generation language. Second generation language can be otherwise called as assembly language. It can be better understood compared to machine language. It's the next development phase in the programming language paradigm, and it comprises of mnemonic codes. What do you mean by mnemonic codes? Mnemonic means something that can be easily understood or something that can be easily recollected. See, when programmers write programs using assembly language, it is such kind of a programming language that can be easily understood compared to machine language. Okay. Let us see some examples. For example, here MOV. From the word itself, we can understand that it is something related to move for moving some values from one location to another. Okay, add, it's for adding. So the instruction names itself indicates what the instruction does in the program. Okay, but this assembly language, as it is not binary codes, it cannot be directly executed by the processor. So someone has to convert this assembly language to machine language, and this conversion is done by assembler. The advantage of this assembly language or second generation programming language is that it has improved readability. It can be read better than machine language, but the limitation is the same. It's difficult to use, and it is machine dependent. Assembly language is also machine dependent. Now next we'll compare assembly language and machine language. Look at this slide. I'm sure that you will not be understanding anything that is written under machine language because it comprises of all zeros and ones. Even if you replace one with a zero, you will never understand the difference. But in assembly language, you can see the first instruction indicates that it's a subtraction. We can understand just by looking at the instruction, we can understand that it's a subtraction. But the difficulty is that since it is machine dependent, instruction set of one machine will not be the same as the instruction set of another machine. So again, the programmer will have to study the instruction set of all the machines in which he or she is working. Okay. Next, we'll move on to third generation language. Third generation languages are high level languages. They are really easy compared to the earlier two generations. Instructions are similar to English language. It's not as same as, like, we know that whichever language we use for communication will have some protocols to be followed when we are using them. It might have some grammar subsets, grammar lists. It might have, the words might have different meanings in different contexts. Similarly, programming languages also have grammar, syntax, different protocols that should be followed. But it's not equal to English language, but it has great similarity with English language. Since it has similarity to English language, it is easier to program and it is less error prone. It doesn't mean that errors don't happen. Errors happen, but then it is easy to detect and correct the errors, and the frequency of errors also will be less compared to the previous generation of languages. Okay, now the next speciality of this generation programming language, third generation programming language, is that it is procedural in nature. What do you mean by procedure? It's like a stepwise sequenced list that should be followed to perform a task, right? So all the languages, high level languages, has this nature of has this procedural nature. We have to write programs as procedures. Okay, now next, the translation. It's about translation. Like, since this high level language will not be understood by the computer, we have to translate this to machine language, and this translation is performed using a compiler or an interpreter. There is a difference between compiler and interpreter, but this difference, I'm not mentioning this difference in this slide. I may take those differences in maybe in any other sessions. Now we'll move on to the advantages of third generation programming language. Yes, of course, it has improved readability compared to the first and second generation programming languages, as well as it is easy. The debugging is made easier. What do you mean by debugging? To detect bugs, if any, in a program, and to remove the bugs. Bugs means errors. Okay. Now, speaking about portability, third generation language and all the generation languages above the third generation languages are machine independent. That means it doesn't have dependency on the architecture of the machine. One program written for a problem can be successfully run on other machines also. So examples are COBOL, Fortran, BASIC, etc. Now we move on to fourth generation language. What do you mean by fourth generation language? It is non-procedural in nature. The best example that we can give for a non-procedural language is database management system, database queries. Beginners in computer science domain might not understand these database queries and all, but then just remember that whatever we want, whatever information we want from the computer, we can give specific instructions to the computer, and those instructions will be fewer in a program compared to third generation languages, and the computer will give the result. Okay, like report generators, screen painters, etc. Advantage is that it is also machine independent and it can be easily learned. Now we will move on to fifth generation language. Fifth generation languages are natural languages. They are mainly used in artificial intelligence research, and examples are OPSS and Mercury. Now these languages are also machine independent, so conversion is necessary. Okay. Now we'll move on to classification of programming languages. Programming languages can be classified mainly into two. There are low-level languages and high-level languages. Low-level languages comprises of machine language and assembly language, whereas high-level languages comprises of almost all other languages. Okay. Even though we say fourth, fifth generation and all category of languages can, be considered as high-level languages. This high-level languages can be uh, given a detailed classification further, but I'm not wishing to do so in this session. Now, these low-level languages, we know why it's called low-level language. Why are they called low-level languages? Because they are machine dependent and they are quite deeper related to the architecture of the machine. They are called as low-level languages and they can be used to satisfy system functionalities. Now we'll look where C stands. C is actually a high-level language, but then certain textbooks consider C as middle level. They have specified C as middle level language because C has functionalities of both low level as well as high level languages. C is used to develop different operating systems. C can be used for programmers to connect with the architecture with the at system level, as well as C can be used as high level language for developing different kinds of application softwares also. I hope that you understood the topics that I've covered today. If you have any queries, you can contact me through my mail ID. And in the next session, I will be dealing with program development and algorithm. If you find my classes useful, please like, share, and subscribe. Hope to see you soon. Thank you, and God bless you.